Hey, everybody. This is Angela Johnson, and I have my good friend Heather Wenzel with me today. She is a fellow warrior raiser. And for those of you that have checked out my blog recently on warriorraiser.com, you were able to read Heather's beautiful words with her story of hope. And we are just trying to be hope dealers this month here in January of 2021. And Heather's story is just one that is of profound hope and encouragement. And I just wanted to get her live with us today on camera. And I'm just really excited to have her here with us today. So Heather, welcome.
Thank you.
And she's got a lovely background there. And we had some fun with the background, playing around with getting her visual background there. So we're excited. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of background about how I met Heather. It was about 5 years ago, and we attended the same church. And I was in the middle of starting the mother's ministry at our local church, and it's called MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers. And I went up to Heather one day and I introduced myself. And Heather, you can take it from your perspective of how our first encounter went.
I was actually thinking about this a little bit more, and I thought it is really, really funny. So it was just a regular Sunday, and I'm standing there, in the pew with my husband, and all of a sudden I hear this random woman's voice. And I'm like, oh, I think she's talking to me. And you start telling me all about MOPS. And I'm like, this is such a great thing, but I don't have any kids. I wasn't even pregnant. So later we figured out that it was Angela.
Yes.
And at that time, Angela didn't even know that I had a visual impairment and I could not see her.
Yes. So will you tell us your level of sightedness? I know you explained that in the article that you wrote, but will you tell those of us that are watching today what your current level of sightedness is?
Right now, I am considered legally blind in the right eye and totally blind in the left eye. I have about 30% of peripheral vision in the right eye, and it's like the far outer corner. So I don't have any central vision, which means I can't see faces or drive a car or even read.
So if someone were to come up to you, how would you know they were there?
So right now it would probably be more like a dark blob figure. And if it was moving, I would probably come to the conclusion that it's a person.
Okay, so someone has to announce their presence. So when I came up to you that day, you had no idea that I was speaking to you because you had no idea that I was even there. So yes. So how do you get around now when you do walk around? How do you get around?
So it's called a white cane. That's the special cane that blind people use. And I also have quite a few assistive devices. I have something that attaches to my glasses. I also have special glasses. And right now, if I'm in my house or I'm somewhere familiar, I can walk around pretty independently. If I'm somewhere new or it's dark outside, I usually need assistance from a family member or a friend to kind of get around.
Okay. So let's fast forward to when you joined MOPS. So you knew about it, but then you obviously didn't have any children at the time. So explain how that journey happened. I know that Warrior Raiser isn't necessarily about MOPS, but it's about mothers, and that was the common denominator that we had that kind of forged our friendship a little bit. So go ahead and share a little bit about that process.
Right. So you had planted that little seed in my brain about MOPS, and I was like, this sounds like a great ministry, and I definitely want to check it out if I have children. And so from the time that we had that brief interaction in the pew to when I actually started, my daughter was like 9 months old. And so I told my husband, I was like, I want to go to this. I want to check it out. And he brings me to the church. And at this time, the MOPS meeting was in the back, like the back hallway, and I had no idea how to even get back there. And he gets me into this room and he gets me signed in and he sits me down and I'm like, wow, I don't know anybody. I don't know anyone who's sitting at the table. I'm not even sure, like, if I have to use the restroom, I don't even know where the bathroom is. And so it was kind of nerve wracking, but I just felt like God saying that you're supposed to be here. It'll be fine. And so my husband's like, should I stay? Should I go? And I'm like, you should go and I'll call you when I'm ready to be picked back up. And thankfully a mentor mom saw me and she came in and she swooped me up. And that's how my journey started with MOPS.
And I just love, we've talked about this before, but I just love how the Lord is in the details, because that mentor mom that came and greeted you that day was Bessie. And Bessie has since gone to be with the Lord this year. But the intricate detail about Bessie is that she has a granddaughter that was blind, or that is blind. And so she knew the needs that you had, and she asked you what you wanted to eat, got you set up. And I just love how some of those fears that you had about coming and being left in that vulnerable position were pretty much answered from the time that you came and sat at that table. Mm-hmm. And just, he's in the details, and he cares about all those little things that mattered to us. So, all right. So therein went the first introduction to the MOPS ministry. And I was coordinating at the time, and I remember the Lord just kind of placed this little nugget in my mind. And I had talked to you a couple times, and I thought, wow, there's something about this woman. She's intriguing, she's interesting, she's fun to talk to, and you had just an interesting story. And I didn't know the whole story, but I knew that you had been a nurse, and you had just graduated with your master's in nursing administration a few years prior, right? And so we had that as a common denominator too, because I am a nurse as well. So we could talk some shop, but here you were in this vulnerable place where you have to ask for help a little bit, where you were at one point in time the one who was providing the help. And so talk a little bit about where that whole journey led you with kind of being free to be okay with asking for help.
So initially, that was something that was very, very hard to do. Prior to the visual impairment, I was very independent, which I think most of us are. And when we start to lose that independence, you kind of feel like you're losing yourself. And so I had to come to the realization that it was okay to ask for help, that I needed that help, and that I wasn't a burden. I had to ask for people to assist me with like what documents were on the table or where something was. And sometimes I even had to ask for rides to get to our meetings. And so it was kind of like a 360. I went from providing all the care to my patients to me becoming the patient and needing the care for me.
Yeah, and you were just so open about that, and you were just right up front about all of that. You told me, now, Angela, if you come up to me, you have to put your hand on my shoulder or let me know that you're there. And so I learned some of those things that you don't know, and you kind of take for granted. And so I just thank you for opening my eyes to the struggles that you have in the day-to-day that you live. So backing up to just knowing who you were and getting a flavor of your personality, I felt the Lord just really kind of stir me to ask you if you would be interested in stepping into a leadership position. And for those of you that don't know the MOP structure, we have they have discussion groups, and we sit at tables more often than not. Not every group functions like that, but ours did and does. And there's discussion group leaders, who are those that facilitate the conversation and the flow at the table, and really kind of are the glue of those women that sit there. And so I asked Heather if she would be interested in that. And so Heather, go ahead and give a little bit about how you were feeling and your thoughts about that when I first asked you.
So the first time you mentioned it, I was like, well, let me pray about it. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And so I think it was like maybe the third or fourth meeting that I had been to, and my table leader at the time was talking about how she had just transitioned into that role. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. Like, I don't even know what documents are on the table or what they say. And I just felt really like, no, I'm not ready for this. And so we were actually, me and Angela were at a women's ministry for our church, and this event was happening. And I knew Angela was going to be there, and I just knew that she was going to come up and ask me if I had made a decision yet. And so the entire time I'm sitting there, I'm not paying attention to anything that's going on with our women's ministry, because the entire time I'm like, how am I going to say no? I want to say no. How am I going to say no? And so, eventually you came up to me and I was like, okay, here it is. She's going to ask. And you did.
In a non-pushy way, right?
Right. And I really wanted to say no, but God, he checked me and he's like, no. And so I said yes.
Yes. So because you did say yes, I said, I would like to get to know you a little bit better. And so you invited me to your house, because obviously you cannot drive to me. So we met at your house and you greeted me at the door. And I don't know what I expected when I came to your home that day, or I can't even really recall the preconceived notions that I had about entering the home of someone who was visually impaired. But I just remember walking through that door and just being just awestruck about the normalcy of your home environment. And I was like, okay, there's a TV, there's couches, I'm like, there's toys everywhere, because you had a little one. And you invited me to your kitchen and had me, invited me to sit down. And then I'll never forget, you invited me to have a cup of coffee, and you said, what would you like? Let me make it for you. And I started to get up to go make it for myself. And you're like, no, I've got it. Check me a little bit in a loving way. And so you busted out the mug. And I just was just so in awe of how you're just a rock star. And I mean, obviously that you have to know how to do these things to function in an everyday life. But I think sometimes if we don't know what someone else struggles with, we kind of can make up the narrative in our minds. But when I saw you in your home environment, I was just really just impressed. And you don't use Braille, but you use, correct me if I'm wrong, touch dots.
Right.
Okay, so explain what that is. So if someone's trying to wonder what make a picture in their mind of where you have these things or the environment that you live in.
Right. So they are little tiny circles. They're raised. It's like foam with a sticky part, and you can place that on certain markers, like on the microwave. I have certain buttons programmed with these touch dots. My stove is programmed that way. My washer and dryer. That way I can wash clothes on separate settings. So they're all marked so that I can do it independently.
So when you wrote your article, you didn't really explain the trajectory of how you lost your vision. The story kind of begins with your loss of sight. So how did you get to the point where you're using foam dots on all your accessories to function around your house and be the super mom without sight? So give us a little bit of a backdrop into the history of your journey here.
So it started when I was 11. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And so currently I've had diabetes for 24 years. And back when I was first diagnosed, the common way to take care of that was manual insulin injections. And because me and my husband had gotten married, I was in my late 20s. We knew we wanted kids soon after. And I knew that in order to have a child, I had to have super tight control of my blood sugar. And in order to do that, I had to go on an insulin pump. And so that's kind of where all this started. I started this insulin pump, and at first it was wonderful, but there were things going on inside my body that we didn't know about. And my eyes basically started making blood vessels that I didn't necessarily need, but my body thought, oh, you have a little bit of damage in your eye from the diabetes, and we're going to make these new blood vessels.
Like an
And those,
overproduction, like a healing
right.
process was going on. Now back it up. You were newlywed, right? You had only
Yeah.
been married 2 months, correct?
Right.
Okay, at this
Right.
point. Yeah. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So what happened was those blood vessels started breaking, and I started to have laser surgeries. And what we didn't know is I was creating all this scar tissue. And so eventually that scar tissue tore off my retinas. And when that happens, you can't see anymore. And I ended up having to go through four surgeries in 4.5 months right after we had gotten married to try to save some sight.
Mm.
And they were pretty much all unsuccessful.
So here you are, 2 months into marriage, and now you have this catastrophic injury occur. So you said you wrote in the article that you had 4 surgeries, and then at the end of all of that, what was the ultimate outcome?
So basically, I was sitting in the doctor's chair, and he was just like, Heather, there's just nothing else we can do right now. And this particular doctor had been practicing for a very, very long time. And he told me in the 40 years that he had been, doing eyes and doing surgeries, he could count on one hand the number of people who had the severity that I had.
So that's kind of like a blow to everything that you had just come through. I mean, here you are newly married, newly degreed, and you wrote in the article about having all these dreams and then instantly they become halted. And you share about kind of crying out to the Lord. And for those of you, for those of the viewers that hadn't read your article yet, share a little bit about that process, that loss of identity that you went through, and then the struggle that you went through with the Lord even.
So it was very devastating. Like you said, I was 2 months in to being married when all these eye problems started. It was actually 2 months to the exact day that I woke up and some of my sight was fuzzy, and that kind of sent me down this path. And during that time, I went from, oh, I'm going to get a higher paying job, we're going to sell our current house, we're going to get a bigger one, to being like, I don't even know how to get dressed. I don't know how to make myself a cup of coffee. I don't know how to walk across the street to get the mail. And I was lost. I lost me. And I thought for sure that my husband was going to leave because we were newly married and I couldn't make dinner. I couldn't wash the clothes. I spent a lot of time on the couch in pain. A lot of my surgeries were painful with each one. They became more complicated. And I really felt like I was lost. And I started to feel like there just wasn't really a purpose anymore. I couldn't figure out who I was, how to be a wife. Most certainly would not be able to be a mother. Um, and when you kind of lose all of that, I thought we lost some of our financial independence. I thought we were going to lose our house. I became severely depressed. And I spent a lot of time at home because my husband was still working, and I started to lose my friends. In
You
fact,
lost some, yeah, you lost some key friendships, right?
yes, yeah. In fact, my best friend, she walked out on me. And so here I am sitting on the couch, I'm home alone. Um, and I just began to cry out to God, like, what's the plan here? There is no plan. What's the purpose? There is no purpose. How can you use this? I can't do anything. And I really think I would just be better if I wasn't, here, if I wasn't part of the situation anymore. I'm a burden. My family just, I don't think they know how to take care of me. And I really thought at one time that I would probably be better off in an assisted living, just because of how much care I needed. So I really wanted God to just take me out. I wanted him to die. I wanted him to just let me die. And as I'm crying out, he eventually tells me no, which sometimes God answers your prayers and he says no,
Yeah.
which is good for us because that wasn't part of my plan. And so he basically said, no, get up. You can, I didn't bring you this far to leave you.
Mm.
You have authority. I have given you the authority, and you need to take back what the devil has stolen from you. And that's exactly what I did. I walked right out of that depression with no counseling, with no medication, and I started rehabilitation.
And that had to be a work of the Lord, because to come out of that deep, dark place where you see no way out, literally have no visual way to see out. I remember you telling me one time that you had to learn the pathway around your neighborhood just to go on a walk or just to find the lay of the land. And I love what you said about how sometimes the Lord answers our prayer, but he answers it with a no. And just hearing you talk about that, I can recall quite a few times that I prayed for something that I thought was going to be wonderful or amazing, or that I would need, or that I felt was the way that he was directing me. And I've had the no as well in terms of an answered prayer. And so I think that that's an important lesson to share here too. Like sometimes when you're in the midst of just a crisis or a situation where you don't feel like you know the way out, you cry out and you will get an answer. It might not be the answer you want or expect or think you
Right.
need, but his ways are so much higher. And here you are today. And in fact, not only are you still married, you are a mother. So I want to talk to you about that, because that was the other thing. When I walked into your house, I mentioned that you had toys everywhere. I think Chloe was about a little over 2.5 at the time. And while we were there, she needed a diaper change. And I'll never forget, this was one of those moments that was just like, wow, girl, I am just so amazed. You flopped her on the couch, got the diaper out, changed her diaper, threw powder all over her. I mean, she kind of had like a powder outline from on the couch because you were just kind of hitting. You hit the mark, but you hit a little bit around it too. But I
Right.
just remember just being like, okay, Lord. And not to say that whatever anyone else is going through doesn't compare, because our situations are relative, but he sees us where we are. He knows us and he knows the exact things that we need. And your story is such a story of hope and encouragement, because here you are today. You know you have a calling on your life. You have been now in ministry and in a leadership position for at least 4 years now, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been going to MAPS for probably 4.5.
Okay.
In a leader position, I would say probably close to two.
Okay. So
So
what now? Where do you feel like the Lord is going to be able to use this for his glory?
I definitely think that my testimony is for him. In fact, I think when I came to you, when I wasn't a leader and I told you that I had a testimony and I needed to share it, I think that's kind of how some of this started. Was I was just an attendee mom. I was just there doing the meetings, and I felt that God was saying, you need to share your story.
Mm.
And so from there, um, like parts of my testimony has been shared in multiple platforms, like the Bible studies that we've done um, on your blog now. And then I shared my story with my MOPS group. And so I feel that God is really leading me down a path to encourage women and moms that, the devil may be whispering in your ear something that is not the truth. And despite what you're going through, like, there is hope. And so at this point, my next steps, I have registered on the MOPS speaker website to just get out there and share my story a little bit more and to spread encouragement.
Amen. And you talked to me one time about your healing and that you have prayed for your healing. And share with me and those listening where you feel you are right now with that process of healing.
Right. So while I'm still blind, I feel that God has healed me on the inside. I am completely whole. I feel like it is well with my soul. This situation is not easy, and there's been a lot of times where I've had to learn how to make this work for me. But on the inside, I feel complete.
Mm. And isn't that just the story of who Jesus is to us?
Yeah.
Anything that we're lacking, any part of us that we feel inadequate in, or having thoughts that we are not worthy enough, he just comes in and he fills all those empty spaces, and he makes us whole. So I'm encouraged every time I talk to you. I mean, I've heard your story quite a few times now, but every time, Heather, I am just encouraged. And I just felt the Lord just move my mind to think about bringing hope in a different way. And I know that the word says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so I am just so grateful for you just taking the time. I know you can't see anything, and you'll never see the faces of those that may come up to you and thank you for this, unless Jesus makes your whole body whole on the outside, on this side of heaven. But I am just so grateful that you just took the time to share your story, and just to be a light, and just to be a bearer of hope in a really bleak and ugly world that we are living in today. So if anybody wants to reach out to you or has questions for you, you are on social media, correct?
Yes, Facebook.
Okay, and you can always leave a comment on the blog, and she can get back to you there as well. And so if you haven't read her full story, go ahead and check it out at warriorrazor.com. And I am just so grateful for you, Heather, my good friend, and you are just a true blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See ya.